Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Subplot A Course, a podcast discussing a new science fiction literary work every month by casual fans just like you. I'm Stavros, and with me is someone who exemplifies the phrase, if you can't do, teach. Charlie. Say hi, Charlie.
Hello.
Also with me is Vincent, who as a doctor was once trapped inside a circle of apples for 3 days, even though he's not that kind of doctor. Say hi, Vincent.
Bonjour, mes amis.
All right, and finally we're also joined by John, who has apparently decided that the poofier his hair gets, the closer he is to space. Say hi, John.
I am marginally closer. That is fact. Hello.
It's true. All right, for episode 3, we're going to talk about Ready Player One. It's a more contemporary book for a change, published in 2011 by Ernest Cline. And as usual, you should be prepared for spoilers because we're going to be talking about things in detail.
Dun, dun.
Very dramatic. So let me quickly summarize the book, and you guys can jump in, of course, if I'm missing anything up.
Let's see if you left out anything important.
I'm sure it'll happen. But basically, it's set in the not too distant future. There's an energy crisis, and the U.S. is basically Mad Max. There's a lot of disarray and poverty and that kind of thing. But in the midst of it all, there is something called the Oasis, which is basically a mix between World of Warcraft and the Matrix from the Matrix films. So everyone loves it. But James Halliday, the guy who made it, he's basically your stereotypic shy nerd, super obsessed with the pop culture of his teenagerhood, which was in the 80s. He dies and lives behind this intricate puzzle that requires a lot of knowledge of the 80s in order to win that contest. All kinds of monies and that kind of thing. If you win that contest, kind of kicks off a global 80s resurgence. And our main character, a guy by the name of Wade, he's a Easter egg hunter or gunter, and luckily he is obsessed enough with 80s culture to go after this egg and has various adventures to get his hands on that egg and get all the money and coincidentally the girl at the end. Spoiler alert, I guess. So let's talk about the Oasis. I feel like this is like the main gimmick of the book. But go ahead.
You forgot about the evil corporation that's like willing to kill people in order to get it themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically a lot of money. It's the inheritance of the guy who basically invented the interwebs of the future.
Yeah,
so it's like, it's a lot of money.
Also, whoever wins controls this online thing, and the evil company would, of course, start charging monthly fees. Dun, dun, dun.
Monthly hell.
Well, in all fairness, though, in this dystopian, universe that he's created, I think fees would generally mean that there would not be the free access that he and others like him enjoy.
It would be freemium. You must do ads.
So, wait. Were we going to leave that for later? So, should we do the first topic? I figured talking about like the economics of the Oasis, or is that what we're getting on? What's the first topic?
We can. It's all kind of meshed together. So, of course, I want to talk about the Oasis. So that's like the WoW, the Matrix mix. So basically, like you guys are kind of saying, it's like it's free to everyone right now, which is nice because nobody has any money for the most part. You get into it by putting on your visor and your haptic gloves and that kind of thing, and everyone loves it because it's free and nobody wants it to be a pay service basically.
I think maybe the best way to organize it, let's talk about the pros and cons of the Oasis. I think there are a lot of people who have a lot of cons in this group, and I think I have a few pros. So I'm going to start at least with my first pro, which is...
I don't think you assume we all hate it.
Well, you guys did kind of hate on the book for a little while, and I was like, we need something more modern. And I will admit that this book is not written like Shakespeare or like anyone who has very extensive writing skills, but the creativity is kind of there. So my main pro for the Oasis is the fact that he frames the education system within the Oasis. So kids, because they can't go to physical schools anymore, they go to school online. And the main draw there is that when you're online and you're learning, then one, you have access to all the libraries, you have all access to books and stuff like that. So you have universal access to materials. But on top of that, you also have virtual classrooms where people can't beat the crap out of you. They can't bully you. You have less rich experiences with people, arguably, because they're digital and they can lie and they can be whoever they want to be and tell you like lies. But at the same time, people can't mess with you and take your lunch money and, like distract you in class because you can mute them online. So that was my main pro. I really like that creative aspect of the book, education online.
No, I thought that was fine. Like, it seems, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in the
It already does. I teach online.
not too different. Yeah, not too distant future stuff. More like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in the book they explain it as not quite the transition from normal schools to essentially these virtual schools, which people participate online. It's not as if they frame it as an upgrade per se. Most of the school systems simply could not afford the requisite amount of money for physical goods. I think in this world, physical goods don't really mean very much, except as they apply strictly to your ability to access and enjoy the oasis. Because people live in squalor, and most of the infrastructure is not affordable. So that basically, there's so many. The school system is failing essentially.
Most of the infrastructure is owned by evil corporations.
So the oasis is a way for them to save money, and yeah, there probably are benefits probably to doing that. But I think there's a critical assumption that students who have virtual relationships or virtual socialization is equivalent to this to normal, essentially.
Yeah, how the heck does the population stay up when everyone's virtually interacting with each other? There must be like a population crash going on.
Well, it's not that far into the future. It's like the 1940s, and even then, it's like everyone's life sucks outside of the oasis.
So let's talk about that, because obviously calling it the oasis is obvious. Real life is the desert. Going to the oasis is like the best time. Yeah,
they're
veiled metaphor.
Very strong metaphors that beat you over the head with how metaphoric they are.
Yeah. But basically, I mean, the Oasis basically sounds like a free-to-play MMO.
Except, you can't do anything.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? So basically, nobody can get any jobs, but Wade at the beginning of the book has no money, so he basically can't do anything. But it feels like he's kind of the exception and not the rule there. So how is anyone affording all of these microtransactions?
That's the thing. It's like there's this whole game universe for you to do, but it costs real money to actually travel anywhere or do anything. It costs money to buy your even bullets and gas and stuff. But they also talk about how people just live sadly on the streets starving, and I'm like, so is this basically just a really sad interactive version of Facebook on one planet for 99% of the universe?
Yeah, does everyone have a haptics gloves and headsets and stuff? Does it basically imply that everyone has it?
The basic version is the visor and gloves.
I think they get issued to all students, so it's part of education. I think.
Okay.
So that's
from whatever.
Yeah, so there's a rub here, which is that obviously the economy is sort of the economy of this world is kind of based on people being able to afford these upgrades, right? The Oasis is paid for by that, and obviously it's a successful company. So Wade, the main character essentially, he doesn't know anybody who belongs to this class of people who do have money. They may have jobs. Obviously, he does. He lives in a place and in a community where nobody has jobs, or jobs are very scarce, and it's very difficult to get money. Of those people, it's not entirely clear that the Oasis is actually something they plug into. He talks about his aunts and some other people in his life. It's not clear to me that whatever this lower class or lower income individuals, they seem like a lower class as written in the book, of people who essentially do not have access to adequate amounts of money. It's not clear to me that they're actually part of the Oasis. If anything, the students are, but only because it's subsidized.
Yeah, and they get a free headset and gloves for as long as they're in school or whatever.
Exactly.
I think you're right, John, because pretty much all the characters in the book that he actually ends up meeting in real life, they're pro gamers, they've got their own cribs, they're really rich, or he's the only one who's living in a trailer park which is stacked to the sky, trailers on top of trailers, apartment building.
That's right.
And he's the only one who actually comes from poverty. He's I can participate in normal society with all these rich people and be very contributive and win all the cash.
It feels kind of it kind of works, but on the other hand, it feels like the combination of post-apocalyptic world and the real world and this virtual world and the evil corporation is all just kind of a justification to be like, oh look, everyone likes this thing. This is the important thing for the world, but we have real stakes for this video game sweepstake thing.
It's not too far-fetched given how pervasive the internet is nowadays, like how much time people spend online. Like if you take it like a couple steps further and you say the internet upgrades to the Oasis, it wouldn't be that surprising given how much time we all spend on computers every day. Like imagine our jobs are just like, oh, we're just online all the time, which is not that far from the truth.
I mean, that's different, but like combine that with like Mad Max where you can't even buy gas or food.
Hey, let some presidents be president for long enough and we might reach that.
Oh man.
I'm not going to name names. Not going to name names. You can sway whichever side you want to sway.
Well, let me bring up this about the Oasis, because the Oasis is obviously the main hook or gimmick for the book, and the reason, aside from all the plot and everything, is because you can basically live out your nerd fantasies.
Yes.
You can fly in space, be a wizard, and I think that is basically the main draw of this book. Would you guys agree?
That essentially
I think also the main draw of the book is the 80s. Like this author just wants to talk about every single game and every single 80s reference he ever heard of and put it in a book. Like I think that was priority one. Priority two is them being super cool within that realm of I know all the 80s stuff.
Yeah, I kind of think that's true. I mean, if you're not somebody who's into computing or gaming, or if that's not something that you're particularly interested in, I think you'd have a hard time really connecting with this book and understanding what the motivation is to be in this world.
Well,
to some extent.
A computer program had him go from an obese, probably going to die of a heart attack gamer to like physically fit with muscles in about 3 months because he put a program on it.
Yeah. I mean, since we were all born in the 80s, I feel like our connection to the book is like weak but still there. Like when he mentions games like Joust and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, I kind of know what Joust was. It was totally on its way out in the arcade game world, but I kind of know what he was referencing. Like if it had been phrased in like as a 90s kind of book, I think we would have been like all over it. Like, oh my god, there were references to Baldur's Gate and like, Backstreet Boys songs. Like we know that stuff. Like we would have been totally much more invested. But like when he's referencing other stuff, we're like, I kind of.
The book almost feels like if you ever see like YouTube series on gaming or whatever, like history of all this stuff, it's like I know the book really rubbed me the wrong way at the start because I was just like, oh my god, this feels like watching some YouTube video, except for the people are taking it way too seriously, and this is lasting like it's just got
like
300 pages of
almost.
this. Yeah, but like as it went on, I got more into it and that sort of thing. And it's like there's still times where it's like, yeah, you got that reference in, but sometimes there's references where I was like, wait, did he just reference Japanese Spider-Man? Like,
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
So I mean, how much of the enjoyment of this book is just straight up nostalgia? Like, hey, you guys, don't you remember the 80s and arcade games? Weren't those great?
100%.
Constructed around nostalgia.
Like
100%.
You know what's the key moment that defines to me? It's like, how one of the final scenes is a massive Monty Python Holy Grail reference. I was like, are you still the guy who quotes the Holy Grail and thinks it's still funny, or are you the kid who was rolling their eyes and wanted to punch everyone like all the way back in 7th grade because that had already gotten old? Or are you like somewhere in between where you're adult enough to be like, this is still entertaining, but I'm not going to obsess over it? Like, It's like, where do you lie and all that sort of stuff kind of defines, like, are you just going to be over this, or is it going to be like, okay, this is amusing as it goes along?
I kind of want to see the sales statistics of this book broken down by demographics.
Yes.
And see if someone if you were born in the mid 70s, then tons of you bought this book.
Like when
in the 80s, maybe not as much.
Like when I bought the book, I bought it at a Barnes and Noble. Where's our advertising?
Does it exist?
Money? Yeah,
No, they exist. In the 80s they did.
No, they exist in the Oasis, maybe.
Only in the Oasis.
When I bought the book, the person at the cash register's like, oh my god, this is my boyfriend's favorite book. Like, you're going to love it. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then, on the other hand, I talked to our mutual friend, and he's like, God, it's so right, but it's like, I don't know why everyone likes it so much. But so I was kind of like, okay, we'll see how it is. I feel like I came down kind of in the middle, but...
I feel like it's a definition of a guilty pleasure. It's like a piece of literature which will not stand the test of time Like nobody in their right mind will assign this as like required summer reading like 10 years from now because nobody's going to understand it. But it's a really good piece of periodic literature. Like sometimes when you read like Charles Dickens and you're kind of like, oh, they got paid by the word. Oh, this is kind of interesting to read. Like maybe like 60 years from now, they'll be like, oh, if you really want to know what like the 80s were and what a nerd was defined as, you can read this book. And people will be like, oh, okay, that was like a good like 2 hours of my time. That was really weird.
You don't think there's any lasting?
I think it's
lasting value. I mean,
it's a historical record. It's a historical record, and that's the lasting value. But in terms of like high literature, like nobody's going to read it like 30 years from now and be like, "Oh, those metaphors, so deep, so complex." I really want to emulate that art style.
Like after reading The Forever War, I was kind of like, "Oh, this is really like deep and insightful and that sort of stuff." And after John Carter, it's like, "Okay, that was just light adventure fare," but it's really cool seeing like after the fact, like, "Okay, this was written in like the 19 teens or whatever, like holy crap, he came up with all this stuff." Like as I was reading the end of this book, I was like, what does this remind me of? Like, what am I feeling? And it reminded me more of just like your typical young adult adventure novel, like Hunger Games or whatever, where it's like, yeah, it's entertaining, but I don't get like why they're so popular. But
let's talk about the popularity, because this book, I mean, sold pretty well. And you know, I think it obviously is because of the nostalgia factor.
Oh yeah, that's entertaining.
Is that like a genre of entertainment at this point? Is like referential entertainment?
Wasn't there that 70s show, like about the 70s, and everyone loved that show?
Hey, maybe this will go down in history as
I feel like this is that 80s show, like only
that's interesting you bring that up, though, because you know the target demographic for the 70s show wasn't necessarily people born in the 60s who would have been teenagers in the 70s as the characters were portrayed. I kind of think that you can be into nostalgia. You can be nostalgic about times where you may have had even a very loose connection or no connection really to. People are nostalgic about the 60s and the 50s. Yeah. There's sock hops and people our age, and to some extent the music and the cultural phenomenon, and to some extent that it doesn't really matter that you necessarily lived it. You can still be nostalgic about it.
Like, I think I was saving this for kind of my final point, but like the main thing about this book is, just like, you know, this is a show about sci-fi, but I actually haven't read that much sci-fi or fantasy. It's like there's a very fine line between like fun adventure novel influenced by your own preferences versus just like self-indulgent power fantasy, just like completely whoring itself out on whatever the author wants to be cool or the best thing. And like at first this book was way on the wrong side of that for me, but as it went along, it like slowly crept into the like, okay, it's just fun adventure novel with some like cool references and stuff like that. So
fair enough. So let's move on to the next point here. So I'm kind of on the meta plot side of things. So, you know, as you kind of talked about, there's, you know, the U.S. is in this super economic downturn, energy crisis, kind of a thing. So Wade, you know, he at the end of the novel, so he gets the Easter egg. He beats like the super evil corporation, and he gets his hands on these like millions of dollars. And one of the things that Halliday, you know, like the super like Obi-Wan Kenobi like hologram moments at the end was like, hey, like here's the big red button that like turns off all of these people that are avoiding reality. You'll know when to press that, right? And he's kind of like, yeah. And then like he just like immediately turns off the Oasis and goes and hangs out with his super cool like egg hunter girlfriend.
Wait, did he turn off the Oasis?
No, he didn't turn off the Oasis. He just logged out.
I was like, everyone else was like, God damn it, no!
But my point is that, you know, this guy has, you know, I'm kind of like, as the book keeps on going on and on, I'm thinking like, wow, this is like, you know, there's these awesome like battle, like you can have like, you know, your X-Wing and your Firefly ships and whatever inside the Oasis, but outside is just like this horrific wasteland where nobody wants to, you know, really dig the U.S. or the world out of this hole. So I'm like, the book is kind of good. I'm like, wow, like maybe he'll just, you know, do something like give the money to charity or like do something. And then he gets presented with this big red button, and I'm like, wow, like he's gonna have the opportunity to like make people unplug and face reality. But then he doesn't. He's like, I'm gonna go hang out with this girl that I really like. So good luck.
I like that. You know what? I really like that they left it open. Like he has all these options, but doesn't say which one he takes. Like any of them would feel super moralizing, especially after it just being kind of like a fun, like, don't you love the '80s referential adventure novel? Like I like the fact that it was open at the end, and even I was expecting like the love story to be like super cringy, but instead it was just like nice and simple, and I was fine with it.
What do the rest of you guys think about this? Should he have turned off the Oasis at the end there, or some kind of statement about society, or did you like the ending?
I think going cold turkey is a good way to get a lot of addicted people really upset. It's like the prohibition. It's like, oh, we're turning off all the alcohol, and all the alcoholics are like, no, and they're super mad, and they're like bootlegging left and right. Like, I feel like if you were going to hit the big red button, you need a transition plan. Like, hey, everybody, we're thinking about getting rid of the Oasis. What say you? As opposed to I'm hitting the big red button because now I have a girlfriend. Enjoy your lonely lives, suckers. It's like think of all the relationships. Think of the education system that you're destroying when you hit the red button. Of course, you're getting rid of all the people who are just fantasizing. But I mean, if the education system is based in the big red button, who would say yes to turning off all the children's education from now to the indefinable future?
Besides, super evil corporation probably has their own version ready to launch to addict everyone too. Except it would be monthly payments. No,
no.
It's not entirely clear that really there's a good option. I mean, Vince, you hit it on the head about how the society has sort of integrated itself, including the education system, into the Oasis. So it's not just easy as society will be fine if I just go ahead and turn this off. But also, really, the power. Yes, he did leave him money, but the biggest value is that he left him. Is that the character who's leaving behind all this stuff to Wade essentially is leaving behind the most precious thing is the company. The company is valued very highly because the Oasis is, I don't know what part of the economy, a large part. But if he turns off the Oasis, and since the Oasis is now essentially the company, you basically tank the value of the company. The company is essentially worthless if you destroy the only product with which it has control. Yeah. So, I mean, he turns it off, then he suddenly has no power anymore, right?
So I think he still has tons of money, just separate from the company. Like, the other guy who founded the Oasis, they live in this Mad Max world of poverty, and the other guy has built himself an entire, not virtual world, real world replica of Tolkien's Rivendell that he lives in. And so I'm just like, economics! What?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, the '80s fetish that's going on here really trumps his morality. It's a weird morality where he's like, well, really, people should take care of the earth, and big corporations are bad, but people being ultra wealthy and not, and while there's people who are essentially living in destitution, that's fine. He's fine with that. That's no big deal.
At least he built himself something real, whereas most ultra-wealthy people just dump their money into the Oasis, apparently.
That's right. Nothing but upgrades and skins.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, my main problem is that, as the book went on and on, it felt like all these people are just avoiding the horrible reality by indulging in self-indulgent 80s fantasies. So I was kind of hoping for him to be like, yeah, maybe we'll turn this off, eventually we'll work people off of it. I want a better world, and then none of that happens.
I'm coming over to your house tomorrow. I'm taking away your internet, and I'm smashing your computers. Enjoy your life without the computers.
That was the hilarious thing about the ending, though, is he meets up with the dead guy's avatar, who's like, don't be like me, and you should discover that there's more to real life than just all this stuff you can have on your own. I'm like, you just offered billions upon billions of dollars to turn entire generations of people into you, completely obsessive 80s nerds. What kind of moral is that?
That's a good point.
Oh, what do you think, Stav? Is there an assumption that those are on opposing sides? That caring and being, because it's not like when you go in the Oasis that things in the real world are unobservable to you. I mean, to be honest, living in the Oasis, you're even more connected to news and what's going on because you have constant.
I don't know. I mean, Wade literally blacks out his windows and turns off the outside world. The hero character does this so he can focus on the future internets. So I feel like that I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I was hoping for more world improvements instead of I'm rich and I have a girlfriend, so life is great. The end.
I think with the overall plot of the book that it's it wasn't about the real world or anything like that. Like I was saying, it's like I felt like any of the like, and then I did this and everything was great would have been a giant cop out. Versus, it's like, you know what, he did his little thing, he got his money, he's got his girl, and we'll see what happens from there.
All right, so
then there's
here's an ultimate metaphor for you guys to think about. It just came to my mind as
The
you were talking
Oasis.
about all the weird stuff going on. What if this book is actually just a literary version of Bohemian Rhapsody by Freddie Mercury? Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. I'm just a poor boy. I need no sympathy because I'm easy come, easy go, little high, little low. And it goes on and on. I'm just like, holy moly, like this just sounds like the book. It's really crazy.
That's a good point.
We can research this.
I just looked at the lyrics because it came to my mind just randomly. I was like, I gotta know what the lyrics are because I was about to sing a little bit of it, and I was like, I don't remember all the lyrics. Stop this outro, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay, we'll save that for the outro.
Boom.
Yeah.
Dang it.
All right, so let's jump to the final topic here. So at one point, Wade, he's got all his in-game monies, and he basically owns an asteroid, I think. And he's got, he's kind of like a super cool science fiction hero guy, and he's got an X-wing and a Firefly ship and all kinds of other stuff in his stronghold. Basically, there is no copyright infringement in the Oasis. You can have whatever you want. So I want to go around and ask you guys. You say you have unlimited funds. You live in the Oasis. You can rip off any IP you want. You own a small asteroid. What would you want? And I'll start off with me. I'm of course a huge Star Trek nerd. So I think I would be happy with just a Galaxy class starship. I don't even need the asteroid.
Enterprise E. Upgrade, buddy. Upgrade like you can.
I'm going Galaxy class. In fact, I don't know if I would need anything else from any of the universes. I think that's one of the things that bugged me about this book is just like the mishmash of things shoved together. It's Star Wars with Firefly with whatever else.
Aren't they supposed to be making a movie of this? Like, how's that going to work license-wise?
That's a good question.
Teleporters and replicators. There's some major attractions there. And holodeck. Oh yeah.
So what did you guys want on your super cool asteroid base? John, why don't you go first?
You stole mine. I thought I was gonna say, give me the Enterprise because it's got everything.
It's got a replicator. You can make anything else you want.
You really do. If you think about other genres, I was thinking of Star Wars. I'm a big Star Wars fan. But really, Star Trek is completely self-sustainable, almost completely sustainable. I don't know. I think he's got. I wouldn't want to be so separated from society in my stronghold. I guess I would hope that I could still remain inclusive. So a starship sounds like pretty good. Maybe the Tyrrell building. Who's going to mess with me if I lived in the Tyrrell building?
That's pretty awesome.
You would have a lot of henchmen.
I would have to have a lot of henchmen.
All right, how about you, Charlie? What would you want in your secret asteroid base?
I don't even know. Like, that's really hard.
What's your the fantasy fulfillment?
So, with it being like more sci-fi, it's like not even necessarily for like the star base or whatever, but just to have like the Metroid power suit would be amazing.
Wouldn't you just want a Samus?
And you just you'd be like Mega Man. You just absorb like all the powers of everything, and then you just it'd be crazy. It'd be awesome.
That's a good pick, actually. I like the Samus suit, the Varia suit.
The Varia suit's amazing.
How about you, Vincent?
I don't know. I'm really torn here. Like I'm torn between should my stronghold be an 80s stronghold? Like, is that the question? Because then I'd fill it with Ninja Turtles and Baldur's Gate references and all the things that I really liked when I was growing up. Or should it be I'm just making a really cool crib and I want to enjoy it. And if I really did have a cool crib, something weird about me is that I really like physical objects, and I feel like this book is all about the digital. I would love to have a huge library of first editions of all my favorite books, Count of Monte Cristo, 1001 Arabian Nights, all these really cool things that would mean a lot to me, but they'd only mean to me physically, not a digital copy.
Vincent, you could not have the Book of Arabian Nights. You could have the wife you are going to execute tomorrow tell you the stories every night to prevent you from executing her.
I already have a wife. I don't want another wife to read me stories.
He wants an asteroid-based wife.
Either. I do asteroid wife. I don't need an asteroid wife. Actually, wouldn't even want to be on an asteroid because I feel Okay, actually, my biggest fantasy, actually, which is not necessarily related to this IP per se, is to own a complex of houses. I told you guys this before. I want to own a complex of like mansions and houses and have all of you guys live there with me. So as I get old and I retire and our kids grow up and stuff like that, we all grow up next to each other. So I can like go out and hang out next to your guys. We can LAN party whenever we want. Like, I guess in that sense, it would just be like, give me the coolest crib on Earth so we can all like have a nice, healthy, like atmosphere with give me Rivendell. Yeah, give me Rivendell with like lots and lots of like houses and stuff like that. And I force all of you guys to come live with me with your families. And we all have a great time hanging out, not having to work.
Great time being
like,
forced to live with you.
Just like yeah, exactly. Force you guys to live with me and entertain me, please. Entertain me.
I see.
And then they'd introduce a monthly fee, and you'd unsubscribe, and we'd never see it.
Monthly.
I would pay a monthly fee to keep you guys in the swing with me. That's how much I value you guys. Monthly fees are okay.
All right. Any closing thoughts from the book? Anything we didn't get to cover very briefly?
No, we didn't talk about how ridiculous how hilariously the bad guys are. Also, how they have entire research teams that can't figure this stuff out. I'm just like, no. The bad guys would have figured each of these out in about a month, and they'd own the Oasis. And it would have been sad.
Yeah. Question. Who would have made it the furthest out of our group in this Gunter world? Who would have come up with the most solutions? I think I might have like gotten maybe like 2 out of like the 80 puzzles or something like that. I would not have made it that far.
Oh, yeah.
I also would have gotten murdered by the corporation for sure.
Yeah.
I think that
too much 80s. The first contest was the joust. I just would have died instantly. I wouldn't even be. I think actually it's the D&D puzzle to get to joust. No, come on.
Ooh, D&D. I might have been able to do the D&D thing.
Like, how does the one thing I didn't understand is how death worked in the world. Like, how is it like all the avatars died in the end and lost all their stuff and were deleted? But at the same time, didn't Artemis lose to the joust guy multiple times? And I thought the consequence was or death.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, I was very confused about the like, how does character revival?
When pixels die. You can save and reload. Don't worry about it.
I actually thought it was pretty good. I thought the nostalgic aspects. I was only glancingly aware. I mean, obviously, it's a really important time for gaming, for at least video gaming. That at that time was fundamental. Most of the games we play today are at least significantly, if not glancingly, influenced by type of games, the type of creativity those had. So I was glancingly aware of some of the nostalgic aspects of the book, and I kind of felt afterward. I was like, man, because my grandparents they owned an Atari 2600. I got to play, all the time, and I felt a yearning for it. Now I want to go out and play some 80s games. So if that was the point of the book, it worked.
Was the book okay? So the book, would you say overall positive influence? Would you actually would you say that your time was well spent?
Yeah, no, I liked lots of parts of the book.
That's really trying to get someone to like the book.
I did suggest this book. I did suggest this book. And
Yes, and
I know that there were shortcomings, but I still enjoyed the book because I usually enjoy anything that people put real thought and effort into.
no, and it's like, even though I compared it to stuff like Hunger Games stuff I don't personally care for, like, I would, if they did another book like this and we were reading it again, I wouldn't be like, oh crap, we're reading that. I'm like, no, it was entertaining in the end, and like, I got something out of it. It was fun.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good time.
Whoa, Stavros agreed too? I heard a lot of naysaying when the book was being first proposed.
Well,
There's a
yeah,
paranoia there, I think.
the beginning, and also it's like stuff became like more it became better inserted as the book went along. Like, it was more like, it felt more appropriate the way the references were put in, whereas at the start there was like footnotes and stuff making it feel like it's supposed to be historical, like relaying it to you, and that kind of was like got my eyes rolling, but it worked in the end for me. So
Worked in the end, a ringing endorsement, to be sure.
yeah.
All right, I think that right about wraps up our episode 3, talking about Ready Player One. So as usual, if any listeners out there have feedback or suggestions on books we should read and discuss, you can reach us at subplotofcourse@gmail.com or on Twitter at subplotpodcast. And
Send
for
the
next
feedback,
month,
guys.
yeah, that's right, feedback. And for next month's episode, we're going to be talking about Neuromancer by William Gibson. And by this point, I would usually say goodbye, everyone, but I think Vincent has a song for us.
Oh, damn. Bismillah, no, we will not let you go. Let him go. That's all I got.